So you wanna be a picture book writer, then you gotta write picture books. And you're gonna need a bucket load of bright ideas for titles, plots, and hooks. If you're partial to prose or you're raring to rhyme, then repeat after me. It's a challenge, but I'm gonna tackle each story 1 month at a time with 12 by 12.
Estrela and I thought that a good place to start about talking about how to craft a wordless picture book would be with a definition of what a wordless picture book is. A wordless picture book, might sound obvious, is a book without words or with minimal words. So there are some wordless picture books that aren't truly wordless. I'm going to give you some examples of those, but they function as wordless picture books. So the way I like to think about it is Frank Serafini's definition, which is a wordless picture book is a visually rendered narrative. Because the point is that the story is told in the illustrations, not with the words. And that's really the key part, even in a minimally worded picture book. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So on the left are 2 spreads from Once Upon a Banana by Jennifer Armstrong and David Small. So actually both of these examples are separate author and separate illustrator wordless picture books, which is really interesting. But you can see how the choice was made in the Once Upon a Banana to use some signage on the trash can and on the street corner. There are other signs throughout the narrative that are accents. They're almost like illustrations. The important part is the words are not important. If you can't read them or you cover them up, it wouldn't change your ability to read the story through the illustrations. On the right here is a 2-page spread from Shoulda Crumb's book O, which was illustrated by Patrice Barton. She also wrote an earlier one called Mine. And this is an example of what I would call a minimally worded picture book. The word O is scattered a little bit throughout the text several times. But again, if you couldn't read that, if you didn't have that there, you still would be able to interpret the story without it. And I would argue that the word O in these cases is actually something you might actually say as you are reading this picture book with a child. You see they're building the sandcastle and then the ball lands on it. And you can imagine sitting with a child and telling the story together and saying, uh-oh. So it is just an organic part, but not really a text for the story. In Estrela's book, this is a 2-page spread from Walkies, which hopefully she'll be here to talk about. She does use some words, a lot of amazing she has an example of the dog licking the puddle, the girl stomping through the puddle, and she uses these great little sound words throughout. Again, if you didn't read them, if you didn't notice them, you would have no problem interpreting the story. But there are also other words in wordless picture books. So there are titles, there are copyright pages, there are author's notes, there's flap copy. So there are words that are part of the structure of a wordless picture book, though they're not part of the story. And in Afikomen, because the word Afikomen is not a word that is known by everyone who might be reading the book, we made the decision to put this illustration and bit of text in the book, but the decision was made to put it before the title page, so that it's very clear that it's not part of the story, but it's really just a definition for those who don't know what an afikomen is, which is a piece of matzah that is broken in 2 and used as a crucial part of a Passover Seder. And it would be important to understand what that was for the story. But again, you don't need that word in the story. So that's what the decision was made to put it at the beginning.
So why did I decide to write and illustrate a wordless picture book? You might ask, or maybe not, but I'll ask it for you. Julia, of course, knows she's the co-founder of the Picture Book Summit. So it was actually because of the Picture Book Summit. So there was a talk with John Klassen, and it was about using your fear. So I'll just read it quickly. Making picture books can be scary, but your fears about it are often unique to you. However, neutralizing those fears can leave you with work that's just as unique. Caldecott winner John Klassen will explore the idea that the anxiety about making a book doesn't have to stop you. In fact, it can be the very thing that makes it yours. That's exactly what happened. So what's my fear? Writing, putting actual words into paper. The actual idea of seeing my words written down on paper. English is not my first language, so that is a problem, and that I find sometimes it cripples you a little bit, even though I've been here for 15 years. It's still not a natural language for me. I'm still learning the craft of writing for the first time as an adult. I didn't feel like I was writing since I was a kid, or I didn't continue writing for a long time. So only now I feel like I'm learning the craft of writing for the first time. I'm still trying to find my voice as a writer. I still haven't found it. I know it's not an easy thing to find, but I feel like I'm a bit far away. And to be very honest, I feel like a 6-year-old writing. And when I was on my critique groups, I had really amazing critique partners on 12 by 12. And I always felt like I was the little kid in the group, that every time I wrote something down, I just didn't feel at ease. And I felt like I was a young kid writing. I don't know if that sounds silly. And also, I come from an industry that works a lot with nonverbal movies. This was a short film that I made as a 19-year-old student. And because it's very hard to hire actors, it's very expensive to hire actors for your movies, for your little short films, you actually manage to do films without any voice. So it's quite normal in our industry to actually have wordless or silent movies, but just with music and sound effects. So, that the story is clear. So we're actually quite used to this idea. And we studied the best silent film performer, as you might recognize. There he is. He's a character of a person in his action, in his clothes, and even on his makeup. He actually had to. Usually, people on silent movies have to wear more makeup because their expressions have to read better on screen. And it has all to do with clarity. As you can see, his movements are very clear. His facial expressions are very clear. Everything is very character. And in animation, we are taught to exaggerate every pose and every expression. Why is that? And this is actually something that is really informative on the way I do my wordless picture books. We exaggerate every pose and every expression because it needs to be clear. So the exaggeration communicates clearly your idea. The pose is such an extreme that there's no doubts of what the character is doing. And I'm going to give you an example because I had a class that I gave before about posing. And I would show this picture to the people in the class and I say, what do you think she's doing? Is she holding an apple? Is she showing an apple? Is she drawing an apple? We're actually not sure, right? Because it's not clear. It's not clear. She could be just holding it. She could be drawing. We don't know. It's not clear. So we exaggerate the pose. Okay, now we go to the other extreme. This is very exaggerated, of course. This is very cartoony, but okay, she's throwing an apple. Of course, we don't always have to go the cartoony way. There's ways to do things without being so cartoony and so exaggerated. But in animation, we are taught to exaggerate to be clear because everything reads in a second on screen. And we can't have people or the kids on watching TV to think, what was that? So we are taught to work on our posing and exaggerate it to make it very clear. And clarity is the word. So by exaggerating poses and expression, we make it clear what is happening. So you can see on one side, you can see the guy throwing the ball, and on the other side, you see the animation version of it, which is so exaggerated funny. And there it is. Clarity is the key word.
Do it together so never you fear. It's a handy little way to help you kick into gear. You're amazing, exciting. Look out! 'Cause you're writing 12 by 12.
12 manuscripts.
12 by 12.
12 picture books.
12 by 12.